2025 is coming to a close quicker than I'd like to admit. So let's chat 2026. Welcome back to Wellness Fixes the Pod. I'm your host, Dr. Kelsy Vick, a board certified orthopedic doctor of physical therapy and a pelvic floor physical therapist. And every year, for probably the past 5 years, I've created what I call a word of the year. And I know many of you guys have heard about this and created your own words of the year, but I figured we could chat through how I go about creating my word of the year or setting the intention for my next year, and also reflect over some of my goals in 2025, how I've done, what I'm thinking for 2026, just to give a little bit of New Year inspo. So, a little about me: I'm a Capricorn. I was born in January. I'm a manifesting generator and I'm an Enneagram 3. So, I love new starts, new beginnings. I love change. I love being able to rebrand. And typically, I try and rebrand weekly or daily, which is not really good for long term execution. But I love mood boards and trying to grow in whatever way I can. And oftentimes that leads to me changing different goals that I have or different growth strategies for myself or my business way too frequently to where execution actually falters a little bit. So I've found that in order to focus my efforts, rather than having 20 or 30 goals, if I can just narrow down on a word of the year and set my intention for the next year, I find that's super beneficial for me as someone who is very multi-passionate and wants to rebrand herself and her life like every single week and create new goals before she even accomplishes the old ones. So focusing with just one word has been really beneficial for me. So I'll share with you my process today. Everyone's process is different and that's okay. But if you are struggling with what to do in the new year or how to create certain practices that you might actually stick with rather than trying to remember all 20 of your goals in December that you set last January and you didn't hit any one of them because you had so many, I feel like this practice has really worked for me and maybe it might work for you. So, as far as word creation goes, I like to take a couple of weeks or even months to see what comes to mind, see what articles or talks that I listen to, or church services that I go to, or Bible verses that I read, see what sort of words come to me or speak to me in a certain way. And sometimes that word comes in July, sometimes it comes in November or December. I never like to rush the process, but I'm always careful of when a certain word or phrase speaks to me. I write it down and say, you know what, maybe that's my intention for 2026 or the next year. And it usually comes when I'm able to give myself space to think. So I think quiet time, journaling time, being with your thoughts, not just doom scrolling, is a great way to open up your mind for the potential for a word to speak to you. So a few of my previous words have been words like behold or perseverance. Last year's word was actually the word healing. And I mentioned it on an episode recently, but I had been going through a very intense challenge where I just didn't necessarily feel like myself. And so for 2025, I could feel myself starting to get back to who I was at my core. And so my word of the year that spoke to me probably in maybe September, October of last year, maybe November, around that time frame, was healing, and really focusing on healing in all aspects of my life, healing myself, healing my thought patterns, healing my brain, healing how I communicated with others, healing my relationship with others, healing how I approached work-life balance, healing in a variety of ways. And I feel like that word has exemplified my 2025. It has been one of healing in the best way. And it has been wonderful to see how the word that I selected for 2025 back in 2024 has come to fruition throughout the entirety of 2025. Not only have I felt like I've healed my relationship with myself even more, I know it's a continual process, but I've healed my relationships with others, how I communicate to myself, how I communicate to others. I've healed how I approach things professionally, how I approach things personally. I've healed some of my thought patterns. That's still a work in progress, but I think it always will be, especially when we are raised with such access to different people and comparison around us and negativity around us. It's always going to be a work in progress, but I've learned to stop certain spirals in their tracks and been more intentional with that. So it has been a wonderful year. I've also gone through a very minuscule, like as far as days go, but a very intense challenge for my husband and I back in July, I'd say, where I was not eating for those 3 days. We weren't sleeping very well. Like, it was very intense. And I really do think in order to understand what the word healing meant for me in 2026, God placed that challenge in our lives to see how I would handle it mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of the things, so that I could prove to myself that how I handled that challenge was evidence of healing in all aspects of my life. And it was just amazing. The challenge itself was terrible. I don't want anyone else to go through it at all. But looking back, I realized that in order to show myself and prove to myself that I had healed and that I had taken what I'd learned over the last 2 or 3 years and been able to grow from it and apply it to my current life right now, like I had to go through that challenge. So as much as I would never want to go through it again, it really did reflect back my 2025 word of the year of healing. So in order to create your word of the year and some of the steps that I go through, I give myself time. I take a lot of quiet time each week anyways, but I focus specifically on certain words that speak to me in a certain way and see if that's the intention that I want to go into the new year with. And this is why we're chatting about this a little bit early. I know 2026 isn't that close and I'm still thriving in 2025. I love the Christmas season. I love the holidays. I'm not trying to rush it at all, but I do feel like when we start to think about the new year and when I start to think about my word of the year, it comes to me around this fall time or a few words come to me in this fall time. And I have to use the time that I have left in 2025 and early 2026 to set that intention and set that word of the year rather than just thinking on December 31st, what is going to be my word of the year? What is going to be my intention? I like to make it more of this process and this journey to see what speaks to me and what I truly believe God's putting on my heart as an intention for the new year. I also like to think of themes. So thinking of themes in the previous year, thinking of the theme that I want for the next year. Since I'd been through a significant challenge for almost 2 years back in 2022, 2023, and 2024, like all of those years were pretty challenging for me. And I knew that the theme of the next year was going to be growth and healing. And so I had taken the themes from the past and the themes that I felt were going to be present in the future to create my word of the year. And I've done that with all the words that I've had throughout the last maybe 5 or 6 years that I've actually dedicated each year to a certain word. I also strongly believe that word of the year creation is a feeling. It's not necessarily a choice. Like words like discipline and perseverance was even a strong word. Words like that can be so strong and so motivating and inspiring. But when I chose the word behold, I was just as shocked as all of you guys probably already hear that behold was my word. But I kept reading it in my different verses that I would see. Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. Behold, like it always started like, behold, like God is going to do great things, or behold, this is who I am. And so for me, behold was a weird word. Perseverance makes sense. Healing makes sense. But behold, so it really does come down to a feeling and what words speak to you and what they mean to you. So I've learned that as much as I decide, the word also chooses me and helps guide me through that year. So my word of the year for 2026, I haven't officially come up with, but as far as what's speaking to me now and based on a lot of the different strategies I go through in order to help create a word of the year for the new year, a few of the words that are coming to mind right now are intentional and presence, especially being intentional in my time and relationship with others, where if I am in someone's presence, again, this is where presence comes in, I want to be intentional with that time together. I don't want to be looking forward to the next step or the next thing. I really want to invest in that relationship, that conversation, make the other person feel like they are important to me at that moment and what they're saying is important to me. Presence, I'm always on my phone. I do a lot of work on my phone. So I would like to be a little bit more present in my actual life rather than on the virtual life of social media. So I think those two words are coming to mind, but it also takes into my theme of healing this year, which healing was a lot of internal work, but it also started to push the boundaries into external, where I was healing my relationship and how I showed up with others. That I think being intentional and being present in those two words just push that healing journey a little bit more outside myself, which I really like. So rather than being so centered on how am I healing, how are my thought patterns, starting to get out of myself a little bit more and back into pouring into relationships with others. Besides the word of the year, I also like to come up with some more fun goals. And I want to be able to remember the goals throughout the year. So I never try and come up with 10 or 20. My word of the year, I always remember, but then I have certain side goals. So last year, one of my goals personally was to invest in more quality clothing items, which I think I did a great job with that, and building out my wardrobe of pieces that I pull from that aren't necessarily trendy and might not withstand the test of time, but pulling and buying pieces that are a little bit more classic and a little bit more my style. I also am very proud of this one, but one of my personal goals was stop eating prior to being full, so not overstuffing myself. And I have to say, I remembered this goal a lot where I would stop myself from eating something that I would previously have binged on, like at a really fancy restaurant or yummy dinner or food that I was really looking forward to. I would stop myself prior to feeling super overstuffed and full. I would stop myself just at content, which is hard to do. I don't know if any of you guys struggle with this, but anytime I go to a birthday dinner, I'm celebrating. It's a fancy occasion for me. And so I'm celebrating. It's an occasion for me and I want to enjoy the food, but I would just eat and be so uncomfortable later. So this year I wanted to continue to work on stopping eating before I actually felt full or stuffed, because that's no fun for anyone. So I'm proud of myself for actually sticking to that and remembering that goal throughout the year. And the last personal goal that I didn't necessarily do as well on, but it was less toxicity in my food and environment. And I actually have a really exciting interview coming up that will dive more into this. So this is a continued goal of mine for the new year, and I'm excited to learn from a PhD researcher and pharmacist on her thoughts on the toxins within our environment and how they affect not only our bodies, but also our brains, and not only now for ourselves, but also generations into the future. So stay tuned for that episode. As far as professional goals last year, I had quality over quantity, let go and let God, and more of an expansion mindset. And I'd say as far as professional goals go, it all boiled down to let go and let God. I'd say where the more I felt in alignment with his plans and what I was meant to be doing, the better I performed in doing that task and the better the outcome. The less in alignment that I felt and the more I forced it, the less good I felt about it, obviously, but then the less successful the outcome was too. So I think I'm going to continue that goal in the new year of doing what feels in alignment with what I'm meant to be doing rather than what I feel like I should be doing based on comparing myself to what other people are doing. That was a lot of words, but I hope that made sense. So for 2026, I'm still thinking of some of these fun goals. And again, some of my word of the year, presence, intentional, those are some of the words coming to mind. So nothing's set in stone yet, and I'll probably share that with you guys when it is. But for 2026, I know that I want to invest in my skin health, not only my facial skin, but also my body. I've noticed as I've aged, my healing of my skin is a little bit slower, and I put a lot of effort into the health of my skin on my face, but not as much on the rest of my body. I'll oftentimes skip moisturizing after the shower, or that's all I do is lotion. And that's only sometimes, and obviously hygiene stuff. But I want to put a little bit more effort into caring for the largest organ in my body, which is my skin, and not just the skin on my face, but the skin all over my body. So that's one that I definitely see myself carrying forward into the new year as one of my more fun goals. For professional goals, again, I want to continue to align with what feels good. And then I also want to make more data-driven decisions. And I've started doing that over the back half of this year, but data is extremely hard to collect. So I want to have a better system for that. I have pretty good systems and pretty good software to help me with all of that, but I still think I could be better at that and make more data-driven decisions and execution after that data has been collected. So that's not as much of a fun one, but I've seen benefits of making those data-driven decisions and how they pay off. So I'm excited to work on that more in 2026. I'm sure I'll add more, but that's my overarching broad picture things of what I'm thinking for my word of the year, but then also more of those fun side personal and professional goals. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it seems a little early, but I like to give myself time, especially for those word of the year creations. So I hope this episode helps either give you a better framework or inspires your framework in some way. I hope it inspires your 2026, allows you to reflect on some of the goals you had set for yourself in 2025 and carry some of those forward in 2026. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys again on the next episode of Wellness Fixes the Pod.